Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Monte Poker episode 57. In today's episode, we are playing at, you guessed it, Outlaws Casino here on the beautiful central coast of California, hosting our weekly Thursday game. Game starts as a 1-3 $300 cap, but it is a match to stack game, so the action gets out of control very quickly. Let's jump in and see how we do. All right, ladies and gents, so nothing really happened with our initial $300 buy-in, and stacks were getting bigger, so we added on $200, and then we got involved in a small pot here with pocket tens, decided to raise it to 25 pre. Got 3 callers, made a C-bet on the flop that had 2 face cards. So we're bluffing our socks off with tens. Somehow got that one through. Shortly after, there was a very big 3-way all-in. Connor to my left called a big raise pre-flop with pocket eights. Got very lucky and drilled a set on the flop versus seat sixes, pocket aces. Jensen is over there with a mystery hand. We never got the reveal from him. The turn and river came 2 diamonds, one of which completed a straight, but not the flush. And with that, Connor got almost a full triple up. Nice hand, sir. Shortly after that, I looked down at ace king suited, saw a small open and put in a 3-bet, got 1 caller. Our opponent checked it to us in the dark, so I ended up firing in the dark. Wish I would have seen the flop before throwing a bet out because we did flop the nut flush draw. Very playable hand. But with that, we end up scooping another small pot. Take a quick look around the table and the stacks are getting absolutely massive. And before I can finish capturing B-roll, we see another cooler start with aces versus kings. So we have to get our camera back out of the pod to see if aces are going to get reverse coolered here. The 2 players involved decided to run 2 boards. Aces held on both boards. Seat 2 had seat 8 covered, and with that, he scoops a nearly $2,000 pot. At this point, it was time to get some grub because it looks like we're going to be here for a while, and we have plenty of poker left to play. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hand number 1, we look down at King Jack suited in the big blind. A $10 straddle is on and the action folds over to the small blind, who decides to bump it up to $30. We are in position on the razor, considering there are only 3 of us left. Wouldn't mind putting in a re-raise here to try and isolate just small v big, but it's our buddy Jordan on the button and he'll call the raise, so no real point in inflating this pot too much here. I just go ahead and put in the call. Jordan comes along for the ride as well. 3 of us going to this flop, $90 in the middle. And the board runs out 10-deuce-7 with 1 club. We have a couple overs and 2 backdoor draws. Action checks over to the button, who decides to fire out for $50. The small blind gets out of the way. And when it gets back to me, I'm not entirely convinced that he has anything on this board. He could have a deuce, he could have a 7, he could also have some ace highs, or just 2 Broadway cards himself. So I'm gonna get sticky here and put in the call 1 time. Then we're going to evaluate what our opponent does on the turn. 190 in the middle, and we get the ace of spades. Now we did put ace X into our opponent's range, but we also gave him a lot of single pair holdings and a lot of just 2 Broadway card holdings. Considering I'm putting him on more hands that don't contain an ace versus hands that contain an ace, I think we can apply some aggression here and try to represent it ourselves. And worst case scenario, if we do get called, we can just give up on the river, or if by some miracle we hit a queen, we can put in another bet. So I decide to fire here for $110. Our opponent waves the white flag pretty quickly, and we're able to scoop a small pot to start the night. For this next hand, we look down at pocket jacks under the gun and make a pretty standard open to $20. The action folds over to the small blind, which seems rather unfortunate, but then we get 3-bet to 75, which I am not enjoying whatsoever. But Monte, you have jacks. That's a strong hand. Yes, but we also just got 3-bet heads up, which means our opponent's often just going to have a bigger pair here. If there were a couple of limpers and the action got back to the small blind and he had 3-bet to maybe 100 or 125, I could see that being a hands like 8, 9s, 10s, potentially ace king, because now there's some dead money to go after, and a hand like ace king needs some protection and only wants 1 caller, not multiple callers. But that wasn't the case at all. I made it 20, everyone folded. Action got back to him and he made it 75. A few weeks ago, I would have likely put in a 4-bet here to find out where I'm at, but I'm trying to think about these spots a little bit more and pay attention to the action on the table, position, and stack sizes. Not nitty enough to fold pocket jacks pre-flop, but I'm definitely going to proceed with caution here. We put in the call and we're going heads up to the flop with $150 in the middle. The board runs out deuce jack 10 with 2 clubs. Our opponent continues for 100. Considering we are putting our opponent on on a bigger pair than ours. I don't think we need to be scared of the flush draw nor the straight draw. I debated raising for a moment, but I don't think that's necessary considering we have the nuts right now. So we go ahead and just call the 100 and we're off to the turn, which brings us a 5 of clubs. Kind of a bad card for us, not because we think we have the losing hand now, but because it may slow down the action. So while I'm taking my time thinking about how much I'm going to have to bet here in order for our opponent to put in the call, he relieves us of all our worries by going all in himself.
Call clubs? Nope. I've set.
A set of jacks is good versus pocket queens, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy with the way that we played this one. We suspected we were behind, played the hand cautiously, got the money in after we were ahead, as opposed to the way we've been punting with pocket jacks as of late. Anyhow, glad to be taking this hand down. Moving on to the next one. All right, ladies and gents, before we get into this hand, gotta give you guys a little bit of insight here. We are currently playing the small blind game. If you guys can see on the button there, there is a bunch of money. Quite a few reds, but more importantly, 2 greens in the middle. For those of you that haven't played the small blind game, basically all you have to do is throw some money on top of that dealer button every time it's in front of you. And the only person qualified to win said money is the person in the small blind. Great little side game to play. Definitely induces a lot of action and keeps things interesting. As you may have guessed, we're currently in the small blind and we pick up an absolute premium ace queen offsuit. Considering we're highly incentivized to raise here, no one's going to believe us. We put in a raise with a good hand. I know the graphics say that there's a $25 straddle, but it's actually a $6 straddle. So I am raising to 25 here. Under the gun calls and then the button re-raises to 120. I'm not buying this for a second. Normally this would be a pretty strong hand, but in the very last hand before this, obviously the person on the button was on the small blind. They put in a raise and I 3-bet them pretty big, trying to just take the pot down with pocket nines and additionally keep that money on the button so I would have a shot at it the very next hand. So I suspect our opponent isn't too happy about it and is trying to get us back. I thought about 4-betting in the spot for a second, but I actually think our hand is way more disguised if we just flat here. I doubt our opponent is going to put us on a hand this strong. So we put in the call, under the gun gets out of the way, and we're off to the flop, which comes ace 3 jack with 2 spades. I check here to try and set a trap, but our opponent very quickly checks it back. On the 6 of clubs on the turn, I have to put in a bet. I fire 120 and our opponent very quickly calls. This 3 of club on the river does not change much on this board. I really don't want this to check through, so we're definitely putting in a bet here, but the question is how much. I want to lean on the larger side to the point where it makes it look kind of bluffy, considering we're still incentivized to win what's on the button. So I end up picking a sizing of $400. Apologies, the graphics are a bit off. Chips were lined up straight, so they were a bit hard for the editor to see, but I promise it is 400. And our opponent goes into the tank for a solid minute, maybe even 2 minutes. Really mulling this decision over, so I think the bet sizing we picked was appropriate. At this point, I am certain that we have the best hand, and I'm hoping to see our opponent's chips cross the line, which they do, but with a lot more behind them. Once again, the graphics are a bit off. The all-in says 500, but our opponent has well over 2,000, potentially over 3,000 in his stack right now. It is seat 2 from that clip you guys saw earlier that stacked kings with aces after he already had a massive stack. So the opponent has us covered. It's a lot more than $50 to make the call. Problem is it's not that much more compared to the size of the pot. And for that exact reason, I don't think this is ever a bluff. Why would our opponent shove here with BS, considering we have so little behind? We're gonna get it in with anything that we're holding at this point. But on the flip side, I can't really full top pair with such a good kicker for $200 more or $250, whatever it is. We're getting way too good of a price. Don't have to be right all that often here. If he has a better 2 pair or a full house, so be it. I put in the money and our opponent flips over pocket aces. Rather unfortunate situation. It's just a cooler. If we hadn't bet so big on the river, we probably would have been able to get away from the jam. But as I mentioned, I thought we had the best hand and I was going for value. Don't regret the way that we played this one. Unfortunately, that hand did cost us, so we're going to have to buy some more chips in order to keep playing, and the stacks are super deep here, so we're going to add on for 1,500 and see if we can make anything happen. All right, this next hand is me sticking true to our promise of transparency and honesty. While I don't think we played that last hand bad, I've noticed this bad habit that I have after losing a pretty big pot, whether it was my fault for making a mistake. The run out was bad, etc. I notice I start playing a much wider range almost immediately. This hand is literally 2 minutes after that last one. I'm gonna go ahead and share this hand here. So first mistake, we look down at 9-10 offsuit in the cutoff. Maybe if we were in the button, I could justify making a call here heads up versus a player I think we can outplay, but this should really just be a fold. $100 in the middle. We go to this board of 8-5-7 with 2 diamonds. The hijack continues here for $40. We flopped ourselves an open ender, and I'm thinking I got plenty of outs. What I failed to realize is there's 2 diamonds on the board and 2 of my outs are no good. If we see a 6 or jack of diamonds, that would potentially give one of our opponents a flush, and there are a lot of people involved in this hand. But me at the time did not see this, so naturally we put in the call thinking that we might just be able to drill our open ender here. The button and the blinds got out of the way. The queen of hearts does not improve our hand, but when our opponent checks it over to us, I take this as a sign of him not liking that queen. I'm gonna put in a bet here, but I'm not planning on getting him to fold on this turn card. I'm gonna build up the pot a little bit and then go for a big bet on the river to hopefully get him off of this, or just hit our hand and go for some value. Either way, the bet is gonna be more or less around the same size. So we put in a bet of $65 here on this turn card. Our opponent puts in the call as expected, 3-10 in the middle, and we get the deuce of diamonds. We missed our straight, but the front door flush draw got there. This is an absolutely wonderful card for us to bluff on if our opponent checks it over to us, which he does. So now it's time to go for a big chunky bet. Anything between 270 to about maybe 360 I think is okay here. And we fire for 80. What the hell is that? And our opponent calls with just a pair of 8s, of course, because our river bet was absolutely atrocious. I had set myself up with the game plan on the turn and then just failed to execute on the river because I got scared and didn't want to risk too much money because this opponent had just gotten us in a big hand not that long ago. Talked myself into doing something stupid. If I didn't want to fire big, I should have just checked back the river and given up if I thought our opponent was going to call a big bet. But instead of doing either one of those options, I just gifted him another $80 for absolutely no reason. Adding that on my list of things not to do. On to the next one. We're in the small blind again, ladies and gentlemen, and there is a lot more money on that thing than last time. There's a $20 open with 1 caller. We decide to come along for the ride. We get 1 caller behind us, $80 in the middle, and we just casually flop a full house. Absolutely great. I decide to check here. Action checks all the way around. We go to this turn, which comes a king of clubs, and now I'm going to bet $50, praying that one of our opponents has a king. 180 in the middle. We go heads up to the 7 of spades, and I decide to fire here for $200. Sucks that our opponent couldn't call, but it is really fun winning the side games. For this next hand, we look down at a premium 7-deuce offsuit. I'm not joking, it's actually a premium right now because the 7-deuce game is on for 25 bucks a person. And to add insult to injury, if you are the last person that folds to someone with 7-deuce, you have to pay an extra $25. Under the gun race at 30, the cutoff made it 100. So with an extra $200 in the mix here, you bet your buns we're gonna raise this one up. $250 is now the price of poker. Hoping to just see everybody fold here and scoop an additional 200 along with the dead money, but that's not what happens. Under the gun puts in the call, cutoff gets out of the way. There's actually $600 in the middle, not 500 here. Board runs out 8-6 deuce with 2 clubs. We flop bottom pair. Not really much going on, but our opponent checked it over to us. So we're gonna continue the story that we have a very strong hand here. I decide to fire out for $300 and our opponent goes into the tank. He thought this decision over for about a minute or two and then ultimately decided on an all-in. Yikes. Now I'm the one that is unfortunately in the tank. In most situations, this would be a snap fold, but this particular villain has been known to get out of line in spots like these. Since I'm representing an overpair, I highly doubt that he would play a set like this. It feels like he's trying to push us out of this hand. So the more likely situation is that he has a flush draw. From time to time, he might just have a 6 or an 8 here. think it's good and be going all in to protect his hand. But most of the time, I feel like this is just a flush draw trying to steal the pot. There's already 600 in the middle. 300 of mine is part of the pot, plus the 900 that our opponent already put in. So there's already $1,800 in there. It's a little over 600 for us to call. But if we're right and we take this down with 7-Deuce, there's going to be an additional 200 in there. So we're looking at 600 to pull in a pot of around 2,600. Man, that is tempting. Anyhow, let's go to the real-time commentary.
Why do I feel like I'm good with just a pair? God fucking damn it.
Call.
Straight.
That is a straight.
I pulled an Aaron.
The villain in the hand mentioned that the run out was absolutely sick before flipping over ace deuce of spades. He also asked us how we made that call, but this, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why we made the call. We were representing a monster before the flop and on the flop, and our opponent decided to check raise us with bottom pair, top kicker, no redraw. In this instance, I was wrong and our opponent did not have a flush draw. He did actually have a pair, which was absolutely crushing us, and we went runner for the straight for the suck out of the century, but it could have easily been a flush draw. Regardless of how it happened, we are now sitting on a fat stack of chips. Poor guy in seat 6 then proceeded to get stacked by queens when he had aces by seat 2, and then lost another massive pot to seat 1. Been there before and it does not feel great. Luckily, there's still plenty of chips on the table for him to try and make his money back. 40 minutes go by and the table's getting a bit short-handed. We look down at pocket jacks in the cutoff and decide to bump it up to 20. We get one caller and are going heads up to a flop of 10, 8, 9 with 2 hearts. This is a fairly connected board, so I'm going to go ahead and put in a small bet here, hoping that our opponent is just going to raise off with any 2 pair holdings or better. But we're double blocking both the heart and the straight draws, so I fire here for 20. The button puts in the call, $80 in the middle, and we go to the turn, which comes a 5 of clubs. 6, 7 was already a straight on the flop, so this card really doesn't change anything besides putting a second flush draw on the board. At this point, based on the flop action, I think we have the best hand here, so I'm going to size up for a little bit of protection. I decide to go for a near pot size bet here for $75. The villain doesn't take long before putting in the call. 230 in the middle and the 4 of clubs peels off. As I mentioned earlier, our opponent either has some sort of draw or a single pair holding. The draws are going to most likely fold to any bet here, so our bet sizing should target a single pair holding. Gonna keep it a bit on the smaller side this time. I fire out for $100. Opponent puts in the call. We flip over our jacks and they are good. A bit of a small pot here, but I feel like we extracted the maximum value, so very happy with the way we played this one. The next hand of interest, we pick up pocket 10s under the gun. We bump up the price of poker to $25. The button puts in the call and everybody else gets out of the way. 54 in the middle, and we go to this flop of queen 10-6 rainbow. Drilled middle set on a queen high board, so this could be great for us. Really hoping that our opponent has a queen here. If he does, we're going to get multiple streets of value, but just in case he doesn't have a queen, I'm going to go ahead and check it over to keep his bluffs in. He fires for 50 and we put in the call, so there's 150 in the middle going to this turn, which is the 7 of spades. This card doesn't change too much on this board here. 8-9 makes a straight, but that would have been a gutter anyway, so I'm not worried about that. And at this point, I'm just trying to find out if our opponent has a strong hand that he's value betting or if he's trying to buy the pot. And if he just checks it back, he probably doesn't have very much. So I check it over to him one more time. Our opponent fires for $220. And now I take some time to think this decision over. I'm not concerned with whether or not we have the best hand. My biggest concern right now is whether or not our opponent will call an all in. Given the history I have with this opponent, I feel like he is value betting a queen here with a pretty decent kicker, either ace queen or king queen. At this point, he put in a third of his remaining money. He only has about 400 left behind, so I don't see him folding top pair here on this board. I politely ask for the rest of it. Our opponent thinks it over for a few minutes, but does put in the call for an additional 400. Sorry, this pot is a little bit off on the graphics. It was actually an additional 1248, not 802. So the total pot is 1553. Working with a new editor, so we're still ironing out some of the kinks, and I did not have the time to update all these graphics because we're a little late on this video as it is. Anyhow, going to this river, fading God knows what. Not sure if we even need to fade anything, and it comes the 3 of hearts. Seems like a pretty safe card for us. I flip over our 10s. Our opponent does not look enthused as he slides his cards back to the dealer face down, scoring us a $700 profit. We are in the small blind once again with Queen-Nine suited, and there's $80 on the button. The cutoff opens to 50 with a $15 open behind him. Not really loving this hand in the spot here, but we are getting an awesome price. The pot's already 145. If we call, it's going to be 50 and the pot will be 200. And then we still have 2 players left behind us. The hijack already put 15, so I see him calling the 50. And with this hand, we're not really playing for any single pair holdings. We're more trying to make some sort of straight or flush. So ultimately, I do end up putting in the call. The big blind comes along for the ride, and the hijack comes as well. $200 in the middle, 280 for me specifically. We get an ace high board with a queen on it, so I decide to check here. The action checks over to the cutoff, who continues for $100. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, I just did not believe that he had an ace in this spot. I sincerely thought we were ahead of the cutoff here with just a pair of queens. The problem is we have 2 players left behind us, but they did both check it over to him. So I'm gonna get sticky here and put in the call, and am instantly punished when the big blind comes along as well. I was okay seeing a flop with this hand, but on this board texture, I definitely should not have called a bet playing 4 ways. I know the big blind has me crushed, and now I'm kicking myself for calling. 500 in the middle, and the 3 of hearts peels off on the turn. I check, the big blind jams, the cutoff, and I snap fold. Only lost 150 in this hand, but the additional 100 was unnecessary. Moving on. Nothing really too interesting happened after that last hand. A couple of small pots going in both directions. I was taking pictures for a thumbnail and was about to get up, and the table asked me to stay just a little bit longer. Since it was a bit short-handed, I decided to stick around so the table wouldn't break. Got involved with this hand with ace 10 suited, hit top pair with a pretty good kicker, fired on the flop and got rid of the pre-flop aggressor, fired on the turn and eliminated the only remaining player for a nice little profit here to close out the night. But not before we got involved with the game closing PLO flip. 5 of us involved for 100. Let's see how we do.
I'll tell you if you flip it over.
This is a 4. This is a 4. Oh no, I want a 7 now. I want a 7 now.
Clubs. Okay.
King high.
King high. Oh.
Jack high.
Jack high.
Are you supposed to count?
Shit. 5.
Pair jacks. Pair jacks.
This is dead hand. This is a dead hand. Oh no,
No, it's good. It's live right now.
The one this morning.
6.
club is
5 of clubs.
5 of clubs with nail in the coffin.
All right, that one's out.
Come on.
Oh, 4.
Baby.
Yeah,
Oh,
4.
baby. Let's
4.
go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
8.
One more 8.
Ace. 10.
One more 8.
Oh, full house.
7. 7 ace. Oh, that's gonna be hard to beat.
Yeah, that is pretty hard to beat.
I need another 4.
Damn. No. She did.
You're the only hope for the rest of the table. That's the nail.
He didn't even flip the other 2. He didn't even flip
That's the only card I could have got.
Yeah.
Runner 8. Wow.
Absolutely wild way to close out the night here. Thursdays are always a blast here at Outlaws. But with that, it's time for us to rack up our chips, head to the cage, and see how we did. I'll have the session stats and bankroll update in the outro, along with some closing thoughts on how we did on this session overall. If you guys are interested, stick around. If not, thank you guys for stopping by. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in next week's video. Alrighty, let's get right into the session stats for you guys. So looking over the session, we were in for a total of $2,000, cashed out $3,275 for a total profit of $1,275. This is obviously after we paid out tips, and I always buy my food out of my stack, so I don't have to worry about it. So there were some expenses here, but overall a pretty solid session. Definitely needed that with the way we've been running lately. Looking over our month to date for February in 2025, we're still down over $1,000. Got beat up at the beginning of the month. This is over the course of 6 sessions, totaling 54 hours. Jump back one more, and this is our year to date. So starting the year for 2025, we've played a total of 15 sessions, 108 hours, averaging about $20 an hour. This is nowhere near the goal that we set for ourselves. We wanted to make 5K a month. So far, we have not accomplished that, either last month or this month. Heck, we haven't even accomplished that for the year. But like I said, it was a crazy milestone. We did play a good amount of sessions in January. February was a short month with holidays, birthdays, and other stuff, so I don't feel like we're going to be able to play as many sessions as we did last month. The new goal for this month is to hopefully just break even or be in the green a little bit, and then we'll get right back on that 5K a month bandwagon for the month of March, hopefully. We're not going to be able to hit that goal with 4 sessions a month like we're currently doing. We're going to have to, at the minimum, double it, play anywhere between 8 to 10. Life happens sometimes, but you know, that's what we're shooting for. But fortunately, I'm not going to sit here and get upset and start playing crazy to achieve that goal. The goal is to play good, sound poker, increase the stakes slowly, and try to hit that number. That way, hopefully by the summer, at least 3/4 through the year, we can try to play in some bigger games. Not to say that Outlaws isn't a big game, but you know, try to go somewhere, maybe down in LA, out in Texas, try to get on maybe one of the big streamed platforms. Who knows? Just throwing it out there. That's eventually where we want to go. Not sure if we're going to reach that anytime soon, but you know, those are the milestones we're working towards, and I'm not going to sell myself short. Alrighty, ladies and gents, thank you for stopping by. That's all I got for you this week. Been a pleasure as per usual. Thank you for being patient and waiting for this video to drop. I know it's a couple days late. Hopefully we're on schedule for the next video and we don't have to keep you guys in the dark. Take it easy, guys. Good luck on the felt. See you next week. Peace.